Well, the dream of going 162-0 has officially come to an end in game two of the regular season. What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back and welcome into the Seattle Mariners post game recap. The Mariners dropped a very ugly performance today, 7-0 to the Athletics to fall to 1-1 on the season. Before I do dive into the post game recaps, just want to give some shout outs to every single one of you. Over 2,000 views on my opening day post-game recap, well over 300 likes, and over 50 new subscribers. Thank you, thank you, thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Truly special. So just thank you to anybody that's new that's subscribed. Thank you to hit the like button. Thank you to everybody that's been subscribed coming into yesterday. Again, I just cannot thank you all enough. Loved all the comments. It was fun. I loved reading all your comments. I think I tried to give all of them a thumbs up. Don't expect that every night. If I don't a thumbs up or heart a comment, is not a personal thing. It's hard to go through all of them, but I was on a high from the opening day win. So it was just fun to go through and read them all. And that's what baseball should be, right? It's supposed to be fun. We're supposed to have a good time with it. We're going to laugh together this year. We're going to celebrate, get together, and, we may cry together for a few games like tonight. So there's going to be highs and lows, especially in baseball. This sport, more than any other, is the ultimate of highs and lows, and where you have to stand an even keel to make it through 162. But thank you all so much. To anybody new or just any current subscribers, I do have channel memberships. My first members only live stream of the year will be coming up in the next series against the Guardians, either the Monday or Tuesday game, just depending on my work schedule. We hang out for a couple hours. We talk some ball. I will have some contest giveaways for channel members this year, so keep an eye out for that. I also have little videos sprinkled in here and there, do some baseball movies, talk about them, some Sporkle quizzes. My March Madness picks were for members. Even as we get into NFL, I don't do the Seahawks recaps anymore, but I do some NFL picks and stuff like that for channel members. So think about becoming one. And just wanted to pass that along. But yeah, the Mariners lose this one 7-0 to the A's and fall to 1-1 in the season. My main message, breathe. Breathe. It's game two of the season. Don't let the highs of yesterday and that great opening day win get too high. And don't let the lows of a truly terrible performance. The Mariners are awful today. But don't let that get you down and think that that's going to dictate the rest of the season. Aaron Goldsmith made a great point, I thought, in the eighth inning. He was kind of talking how if the Mariners had exploded offensively the first two games of the series, that doesn't mean that the offense was going to be great this season. And nor does two poor performances mean that the offense is going to be atrocious or the bullpen is going to be atrocious. Now, with that said, well, I do agree with Goldsmith's point, right? Two games, can't look into it. It's two baseball games. It's 6 at-bats and an inning pitched for most of these guys. However, I think most fans that are probably frustrated about tonight would point to the things that were poor for the Mariners tonight are the things we were concerned about coming into the season. The offense and the bullpen were the biggest two concerns, and both those were terrible tonight. So it would be sort of like, hey, the Seahawks offensive line, we're frustrated by it. We think it's going to be bad, and they give up 8 sacks in week 1. Does that dictate how the rest of the season's going to go? No, and football is a little different, 17 games versus 162. Pretty big difference in sample between one game in football and one game in baseball. But the point would be like, well, we thought this was going to be a problem, and it was a problem. So, and that certainly is something that, while, again, breathe, nothing to panic about. Obviously, game 2, it is sort of in the back of my mind like, okay, I was worried about the bullpen and the offense, and they were both really, really bad today. So it's hard not to take that and kind of automatically go into same old Mariners, that we've seen the last few years. So it's hard not to think that way. But these two games aren't what should dictate that. Now, if your thought process coming into the year was, hey, I don't like this offense or I don't like the bullpen, then that should still be on the table for you, obviously. But if you think this offense is going to be better and you think the bullpen's going to stabilize with Taylor and Brash and all that, then nothing's changing after 2 games. So it's kind of a weird feeling a little bit, right? And I said it last night with baseball, right? Like, you win 60, you lose 60. It's what you do with those 42 in between. That will set you apart for the rest of the season. So yeah, tonight's loss stunk. The Mariners looked terrible. It was non-competitive. It was less stressful than yesterday. So, hey, there's that. There's going to be more games like this. They're going to lose a lot of games, right? Like, there's going to be minimum minimum. And this would be very incredible if they only lost 60, but they're going to walk off the field probably close to 70 more times with that same feeling of, ugh, that was bad. You just hope that the wins outdo the losses. I know it's a stupid thing to say. It's so simple, but that's what it is. You just hope there's more games like yesterday than there are games like today. Every team's going to have these games. So let's dive into it a little bit from the pitching to the offense for the Mariners. Luis Castillo got the start, 5 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs, 2 earned, 2 walks, 4 Ks. Thought he started out a little shaky. Got two quick outs on 2 pitches to start the game, although Rooker did have a pretty deep drive into right field. Then he had a couple of walks, labored a little bit, had a lot of 3-ball counts in that second inning. So I thought Castillo did start out a little shaky, even though he didn't give up a run. Then I thought he settled in from the 3rd through most of the 5th inning and looked really solid, looked really good. But unfortunately, with 2 outs in the 5th inning, gave up a couple barrels to Lawrence Butler, and then Brent Rooker hit the 2-run home run. Disappointed to see it end that way. And then Castillo's night was done at 83 pitches. Kind of looks like 85 pitches is going to be the limit, at least the first time through the rotation. Logan had 83 last night, Castillo 83 tonight. Would have been nice to see him get through that 5th inning without giving up the home run to Rooker, obviously, and then the double to Butler. Those are good hitters. They're going to get you, but with 2 outs, nobody on, you hope to get out of that for sure. And then you'd like to see the pitch count a little bit lower, but some of those early walks and then the 3-ball counts for Castillo labored a little bit early and kind of got the pitch count up there a little bit. I thought Logan Gilbert last night was fantastic. I'd say Castillo tonight was fine. I didn't think that's the best I've ever seen him, but I'm not going to also come on and complain about 5 innings of 2 earned runs. That's enough to keep you in a ball game and give you a chance to win it. So it's nothing that I'm going to be too upset about. But I didn't think he was super sharp. In the middle, I thought he was really sharp, but start and end were a little shaky for Luis Castillo. However, he was probably by far the best pitcher that took the mound tonight because the bullpen was absolutely atrocious. Actually, Gregory Santos was okay. Did have a walk in his inning, but was hitting 99, had a little movement on it, was throwing it with ease. Donovan Solano made a nice play behind him defensively to get the out at second base there on, I think, infield hit that got away from Solano a little bit. So I thought Santos was fine. Looks like they're going to kind of ease him in a little bit. And I don't want to say 2-0 in the 6th inning it's not low leverage, but it's not high leverage either. It's just kind of easing him in before maybe hopefully using him in more spots like we saw Trent Thornton in last night. But I thought Santos was fine overall. He was certainly the best of the relievers, no doubt, on this night. Bizzardo, 2/3 of an inning, 1 hit, 2 run, 2 earned, 1 walk, and 1 strikeout. Did strike out Brent Rooker, which is solid. Bizzardo has always kind of been a tough one for me to judge. As soon as I think he's toast, he pitches really well. And then I'm like, hey, I'm kind of on the Bizzardo train. He was actually really good in the second half of last season. I think Bizzardo was one of those guys last year. I think a lot of people remember that game against Texas last year in the summer when they had a 5-6 run lead and he almost blew the entire thing and Stanek had to come in and finish it off. But you can't just remove one performance from a player. But I think if you looked outside of that performance from Bizzardo, he actually threw the ball really well last year. But then he kind of does this, right, where he's nibbling and not finding the strike zone and stuff like that. He had a walk and gave up a hit. And it's just like the stuff is there. Like you see it, you watch him pitch, you go, yeah, I could see this guy being a really good reliever. Then you see games like this where he's just really frustrating. That was kind of everybody that pitched tonight. Even Castillo, to an extent, was a little frustrating at times tonight. And so was Bizzardo. Taylor Saucedo was pretty rough. 1 inning, 4 hits, 2 runs, 2 earned, 1 walk, no strikeouts. Listen, in Saucedo's defense, I forgot who hit the little bouncer. Was it Blade that led to that 3rd run in the first run in the 7th inning, the 3rd run overall for the A's? Little bouncer over the mound. Tough play for Polanco. Overruns it, and then everyone's kind of in no man's land, and because there's 2 outs, all the runners on the move, and the 3rd run comes across to score. That stinks for Saucedo. Should have been out of that inning, and we're probably talking about a different performance if that happens. However, I say this all the time when this stuff happens. Should Sauce have been out of that inning? Yeah, he got a ground ball, did his job, should have been out of it. Didn't happen. Baseball is weird. Grounders find holes, little bloopers drop in. It is then his job to get the next batter and get out of the inning, proceed to give up a couple doubles, 2 more runs score, break the game open. then gives up the home run to Max Muncy. The next inning, he was bad. Like, Taylor Saucedo was not good tonight. And the bullpen in general, it's missing Brash and Troy Taylor. Again, I'll say it every time. I'm going to repeat myself a lot. When you talk about the team every night, you're just bound to do that. Bullpens are volatile. Like, it happens. This doesn't mean that Taylor Saucedo is terrible. But again, a bullpen that had some question marks coming into the year, really outside of, honestly, you could probably make a case outside of Munoz, right? Like, with who's healthy. I'm not saying everybody that else besides Munoz is bad, but there are question marks with everybody probably but Munoz. Even Colin Snyder, we haven't seen this year and was great last year. Is he going to repeat that? Is Gabe Spire going to bounce back? So disappointing start. I'm certainly not going to talk about roster moves 2 games into a season, but Drew Pomerantz looked pretty good in spring. He is down there in Tacoma. Obviously, you'd have to get him back on the 40-man and do some things, but Saucedo has an option. Just saying, just throwing that out there. Again, this is 1 game, but not an impressive performance. But again, it's kind of the microcosm of baseball, right? He's this close to getting out of that inning, and we're saying, hey, Sauce came in and kind of did a nice job. But unfortunately, Polanco can't make the play, which I think was a tough play. I'm not going to get on Polanco too much for that. And then the ball just kind of sitting there in no man's land. I think Dylan Moore was pointing to it, and no one could get to it. I think Wilson came around and scored on that. But tough outing for Saucedo. Wasn't impressed by his outing. Was not impressed very much by Carlos Vargas, who goes an inning and a third, gives up 3 hits and a run. Of course, a home run to Luis Urias, because, of course, Luis Urias came back and hit a home run. I mean, it's the Mariners, so you knew that was going to come at some point in this series. I thought Vargas's command was okay. I did miss a little bit of the 9th inning with the bathroom break. Sorry, 6-7-0. Like, sometimes you got to go. But, a couple grounders in the 8th, found holes. I don't know. Like, it's always tough to judge, too, in a 6-0 game, how guys are actually pitching. But, Vargas is fighting to stay on this team, right? He's probably the first one that might get the boot when Troy Taylor's ready to come back, or Matt Brash, who's ever ready first. I would think Taylor, but I don't know for certain on that. I don't think it was, the numbers weren't good for Vargas, but tough to judge in a 6-0 game. Bottom line is, Castillo was fine. Santos was fine. Everybody else was bad. It was a bad performance from the bullpen that has some question marks. So we'll see. They've got to be better. So you have to be better, because this offense, while I think can be better than it's been, is not going to be the 27 Yankees. So they're going to need to close out some games. You're fortunate you've got a starting staff that can go deep into games, but early in the season, when you're trying to work up those pitch counts, you're going to need to rely on the bullpen. So wouldn't shock me if we do. I'm not saying we're going to see a roster move tomorrow, but if this continues for a week or two with the bullpen being shaky, it would not shock me at all if we see some guys like Pomerantz come in and get a shot. Legumina come up and get a shot. So I think we could definitely see, I think the leash is going to be short for a lot of guys. I do. I think it's going to be very short for this team, and I don't think they're going to mess around too much with it. I don't think there's anybody in that bullpen outside of Munoz, Santos, probably Snyder a little bit because what he did last year. I think everybody else has a pretty short leash. If they don't perform, I think they'll move on. So these guys have got to step up and get the job done. Well, we talked about how awful the bullpen was, so let's move on to the amazing offensive performance tonight. Hey, first shutout of the season for the Mariners. Boy, I got to tell you, they're 2 games, like, as much as, again, breathe, 2 games. But, man, they look a lot like last year's Mariners, don't they? No runs, 5 hits, 3 walks, 13 strikeouts. Couple people commented yesterday on my video that encouraging thing yesterday was 7 strikeouts and 7 walks. Strikeouts weren't too high. They worked a lot of walks. It was good to see. It was a good balance. Today, not the case, right? 13 strikeouts, 3 walks, the strikeouts were back. I do want to shout out, I thought Jeffrey Springs threw the ball really well. Now, remember when, some of my sayings the last couple of years, you guys remember, I'm out of caps to tip. You get to a certain point in the season where I'm just tired of getting shut out by certain guys, right? Like, and there will reach a point when that's going to happen, if it does happen in June, July, and stuff like that. April, I'm pretty much, let's just see how things play out a little bit, because, and again, like everybody, obviously this is staying the obvious 2 games in, but everybody is a 5 for 5 away from having a 1,000 OPS or a 2,000 OPS. So you can't really jump on anybody too much yet this early, and even into mid to late April, I feel the same way about it. But I will the cap will be tipped to Jeffrey Springs. I thought he threw the ball really well. Nice pickup by the A's. The key is going to be if he can stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, he is an outstanding left-handed pitcher. He can be really good. He can be one of the better lefties, in the American League. In that range at least. I don't think he's Reagan's or Crochet or anything like that. But he is a good pitcher. So the key is going to be staying healthy. And credit where credit's due. I said yesterday, I thought Severino threw the ball well. I thought Springs threw the ball well today. And again, I remember early in the season, you're facing teams' best starting pitchers. You're not facing guys that they're bringing this random guy up from AAA today that's pitched 6 big league innings. Like, you are getting the best that the other teams have to offer. Springs' final line was 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 walk, 9 Ks. So an impressive performance for Jeffrey Springs for sure. Just not much offensively, not really any threats. They did have one, I think it was the bottom of the 5th, where the first 2 men reached. Oh yeah, we do need to talk about that. There was some fun, terrible, the coaching did rear its head today. Manny Acta last year and the last couple of years has had some interesting sends at third base. Christopher Negron takes over at third base coach, and a pretty poor send on Mitch Garver in the 5th inning. His first and second, nobody out. Dylan Moore lined a base hit. I think Garver walked and Polanco singled, I think. And then Dylan Moore singled. And at the time it was 2-0, right? Let me go back to I just want to make sure I get it right. Let me get all the plays here because I want to make sure I get it right, because it was a pivotal point of the game. Yeah, Garver singled, Polanco singled, Solano struck out, Dylan Moore singled, and Negron sent Mitch Garver. He was out by a country mile at home plate. Could have had bases loaded with 1 out. And listen, it's little things like that we don't talk about in the offseason, but this is Christopher Negron's first time as a third base coach. I'm not trying to just make an excuse. It was a terrible send. But there are learning curves, right? Even for coaches at certain spots. So that was a terrible send by Negron there. You could have loaded up the bases with 1 out with JP, and then maybe turning it back over to the top of the order with Victor and Julio and seeing what happens. And then I will say JP was robbed of a hit, and that next at-bat had a line drive with the exit velo of about 97 with a 530 expected at batting average. Blade caught it. So a little disappointing there, definitely, on JP's lineout being caught. Nothing you can do about that. But that could have been a sac fly, potentially, gotten them back in the game, cut the deficit in half. So poor send there by Negron. At the end of the day, it does matter because it was 2-0. Maybe it does change the game around a little bit. Maybe you get Springs out of there at that point after JP. Maybe he's not able to go back for the 6th. He's throwing more pitches. So it does matter at that time. If it was 7-0, I wouldn't care. Like in the 9th inning, was Solano out of the base path there? I don't think so, but who cares? It was 7-0 with 2 outs. They weren't going to score 8 runs with 2 outs. But the 5th inning, it did matter, 2-0. So Negron's got to be better, right? Can't send Garver in that situation. Not much to talk about. Robles 0 for 4. Julio does check in with his first hit of the season in the 8th inning there. He's 1 for 4. Cal 0 for 3 with a walk. Randy 0 for 3 with a walk. Mitch Garver had a nice game. 1 for 3, a base hit and a walk. It's hard to say it now because it was an atrocious game. I do kind of like what this team can do versus lefties. I like that you do have guys like Garver, who's not going to be an everyday player as much this year unless he, really takes off. He doesn't play yesterday, but he gets in there against a lefty. Dylan Moore can hit left-handed pitching. He gets in there today. Donovan Solano was really bad today, but historically he's hit lefties pretty well. So, you do, I think, have a good balance of guys that, aren't going to be in there much versus righties, but can come and play against lefties and help out. So it's hard to say. I feel, not tough to say that now after the terrible performance, but I do kind of like the balance the lineup has a little bit against lefties. And Garver had a nice game with a hit and a walk. So good to see him get off to hopefully a little bit of a better start this season than last year. Polanco was 1 for 3 with the base hit. So Polanco's at-bats look really good. He looks pretty dialed in. Even the outs, he's putting together good at-bats so far. I think Polanco's definitely been the best offensive player through 2 games. Miles Mastroboni pinch hits and has a base hit. So congrats to Mastroboni with 2 outs in the 9th. It was an infield hit. Nothing we're going to write home about, but hey, good for him, right? Hey, in a game when nobody did anything, the team gets 5 hits. at least Master Boney got one, right? He did better than anybody else did for the most part. So good for him. Solano was bad today, 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Of course, the Mariners acquire Solano, talk about how he doesn't strike out much, and puts on that Mariner uniform, man, and the strikeouts just seem to happen. Dylan Moore was 1 for 2 with the base hit. Luke Raley pinched hit, faced McFarland, the lefty, and looked really bad in that at-bat, a quick 3-pitch strikeout. And JP was 0 for 3. So the only good news there, it only took me 45 seconds to get through that offensive performance because there was not a lot to chat about there. Listen, on the micro level, a terrible performance, right? This was an awful game. They played terrible baseball today. The good news is there's 160 left, and they will play better baseball than they did today. There are going to be games like this. Every team has them. You just hope that this isn't the norm, right? You just hope that it is just a couple of games. So breathe, take a deep breath, get it back at it tomorrow, and we'll see what happens for the third game of the season with Bryce Miller on the bump. So excited to see Bryce's first start, and hopefully the bats can get going a little bit. So remember to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you again all so much for all the support yesterday. We're going to have a lot of fun this season. Like I said, we may cry more than we laugh, and maybe we celebrate at the end of it. Who knows? But have a great night, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. And as always, go Mariners. Peace.